Okay, you're not. But I didn't see Evans. I thought Evans. Yes. He's not in the email. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Put a teaser out there, you know, but he wouldn't say what it was. Yeah.
I can.
Good thing can't. Yeah. That works.
Yeah. I mean, slow.
Whatever.
It's 7 o'clock, October 16th, 2019, the regular board meeting for the Amelia County Supervisors is now in session. We have a quorum, and Mr. Harris, would you lead us in invocation?
Let's bow our heads for just a moment. Father in heaven, we thank you for this opportunity to come together and to do the work of the county. We thank you for those who have come. We thank you for your goodness, your grace, and your mercy. Father, we thank you for the rain that we desperately needed. We know that you don't always give us what we want, but you certainly give us what we need. We ask that thou would bless those who've come, bless our actions, trusting that whatever happened to this afternoon would be pleasing in your sight. In your son Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there any need to amend the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure whether there's a need to amend the agenda, but during the section on the drought resolution, I would like to talk for a bit about a possible burn ban as well as designation that DEQ has put on us for the water system. If that's okay to do it during that item number 7, we wouldn't need to amend it.
That'll be fine.
I move the approval of the agenda, Mr. Chairman, with that notation.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, approval of minutes for September the 18th, 2019 regular board meeting. Any comment, gentlemen?
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No. Motion carries. Approval of financial reports. We have a treasury report, the revenue report, expenditures report, and accounts payable, all for September 2019. Would you like to go through these individually, gentlemen, or how would you like to do it?
As a group is fine.
Okay. All in favor?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve all four of these as presented.
All right. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. It's a public comment time at this point. Anyone with any information they want to give us, please do so, as long as it's not on our agenda for this evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am Stuart Price. I live in the Chula area, District 4. Environmental integrity is fundamental. As we steer towards the year 2020, it might help to frame our priorities if we look at our neighbors across the Commonwealth. Last week, the Virginia Association of Counties released its draft 2020 preliminary legislative program. This highlights legislative positions the association wants to put out there before the General Assembly. One section of this document is environment agriculture, highlighting water quality is the top priority. VACO supports intergovernmental efforts to bolster water quality, but opposes the imposition of state fees on solid waste, sewerage, and other services by the local government. Aquifer protection, biosolids, conservation, renewable energy. VACO supports renewable energy measures, including solar, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, the methane emissions at the Maplewood landfill are considered to be renewable energy sources. And Maplewood, of course, is a leader in the field, harvesting landfill gases to reduce emissions and produce electricity. Stormwater control, tree conservation, on-site water systems, and non-point source pollution. Agricultural non-point runoffs would be best managed, VACO says, by way of nutrient management practices, cover crops, no-till farming, livestock stream exclusion, and forested riparian buffers. Here in Amelia, environment and agriculture are fundamental. To steer our county towards 2020, I suggest advancing our interests by working in conjunction with other state authorities, including the Virginia Association of Counties, the Virginia Department of Agriculture, DEQ, and of course, the General Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Good evening. Wayne Russell. I just thought about this a few minutes ago, but I don't know if anybody has actually given the board members an invitation. I'm sure you'll probably get one by email or snail mail or something to the unveiling of the renovated, I guess, monument out here in front of the clerk's office. That's going to be on November 11th at 9 o'clock. Be a very short half-hour ceremony. Mr. Gleason, of course, is on that committee, so he's well aware of it, but I wanted to make sure that everybody else did. This will be, the monument will be replaced, and the side next to the clerk's office will have the names of all the servicemen who died while in service from World War I up to the present, engraved on the back of it.
You remember what time it was? You remember the time?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
Yeah,
Okay.
that should give you time enough to get to the VFW ceremony at the high school at 10. So there should be enough time there to get the ceremony. Abigail Spanberger, the congresswoman, is the guest speaker. We'll have a bagpiper. I'm looking forward to that myself. I don't know about the rest of you. But anyway, so I just want to make sure that the board was aware of the invitation in case somebody didn't get one or didn't see it when it is emailed to you.
Very good. Thank you, Wayne.
Sure.
Yes.
Wayne, I just want to let you know I won't be there. I'll be at the VACO conference.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Brown. I'm a District 3 taxpayer. I recently lost my internet service from Bugs Island Telephone. They pulled out of Amelia County, and it was fortunately just in the nick of time replaced by Mickey Hodges. I don't have any complaints about the service, and I think it's a darn shame this board couldn't do business with it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Anyone else? Well, one more time. Anyone else have anything to say? All right, this closes the public comments period, and we'll now go to staff, committees, organizations, reports and presentations. Be VDOT monthly status report, Mr. Whitaker.
Yes, you have a copy of that report in your package, and there's really nothing out of the ordinary that they've done other than their routine. They have started on Selma Road, and hopefully will be surface treating it shortly if they haven't finished.
Good luck.
Hadn't had a chance to get out there to see yet. And I'll entertain any questions you may have and run any errands you need run.
Any questions, Jim?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like you to pass on to VDOT that we are enjoying the new 609 Grub Hill Church Road. Of course, I don't go past 636 intersection very much, but certainly it's a joy to drive the first mile and a half down to where I live. So it's great. So I'm VDOT to know how much we are enjoying it. Thank you, sir.
All right. Anyone else? Comments? All right, Amelia County School Board. Dr. Harper and Carla Bullock.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I would like to thank everyone who participated in our facilities tours on September 20th. We enjoyed showcasing our schools and receiving feedback from the participants. And we, again, hope this will be an annual event. As you may have seen on the Channel 6 news this evening, or perhaps this morning, the new Amelia County Elementary School playground was showcased today. We had our ribbon cutting ceremony on Monday, September 23rd. And so if you didn't get to see the little clip, you can go to Channel 6 to the community tab under Building Better Minds, and you will see it there. Physical fitness and release from structured academic learning time helps our students become well-rounded individuals. And I know I've said it before, but again, I want to thank you for your contribution to this project and making it a reality for our students. Homecoming was last week, and we would like to thank all of the community members who participated in the parade on Thursday and who joined us at the homecoming game on Friday evening. The football game went into triple overtime, and although our Raiders were not the victors, we congratulate them on the game, which was 56-50. Last month, I reported our opening enrollment of 1651 and ADM of 1633. Our end of September enrollment was 1659 with an ADM of 1637. And finally, in your board packet, you have our financial report for the month of September. As the end of September, we are 1/4 of the way through the school year, or fiscal year anyway, and we're about 1/4 of the way through our school year as well this week. And Ms. Bullock and I are here to answer any questions that you may have regarding that financial report.
Gentlemen? Questions? I'd like to thank you for what you've done. You have done an amazing job with getting the school system straightened out, and you both have done a good job, and I thank you.
Thank you very much. It is certainly a pleasure to be here in Amelia County.
Thank you. Next, we have committees and appointments. Amelia Day, we have 1 in District 5. We have 2 in District 3. I understand both of these are going to pass by. Is that correct, Emma? All right. Next, we have Holiday Lake resolution.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This resolution was forwarded to us by the executive director of Holiday Lake. That fellow's name is Preston Wilson. And obviously to most folks who've been here a while, he's born and raised down next to Beaver Pond. But he's the executive director in his second life, and his 4-H center is looking for $322,000 for capital safety improvements. They're asking all of the counties that use the center and who are also in the area to pass this resolution so we can forward it to the members of the General Assembly and other parties in order to help them make their case for the additional money.
All right. We'd like to accept it as written in the book. What's your pleasure, John?
Move the approval of the resolution, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Next, we have a resolution for Manassas Hill Church, which I think is really amazing to have been in practice for 150 years.
So Mr. Harris brought to our attention that Manassas Hill Baptist Church was celebrating its 150th anniversary on October the 20th, this weekend. And we've prepared a resolution for the board to adopt, and we'll get it to them before the ceremony if the resolution is in order for the board. I can read it, or you can take it as is.
So we're reading it.
Okay. Resolution, Manassas Hill Baptist Church, 150th anniversary, October 20, 2019. Whereas Manassas Hill Baptist Church is commemorating its 150th church anniversary on October 20, 2019. Whereas in 1869, at the farm of quote-unquote old Dr. Booth, people gathered to pray and sing hymns led by Roscoe Ross, Anderson Walker, and Albert Walker. This marked the beginning of Manassas Hill Baptist Church. Later on, nearby land was purchased from E.W. and G.S. Jones, and a log-based church building was erected. The Reverend Lewis Branch was the first ordained minister called, and he was followed shortly by the Reverend Richard Stiff. A Sunday school was established, and a regular day school was housed there until a one-room schoolhouse for the community was built. A new frame church was built in 1874. Several different structures housed Manassas Hill Baptist Church during the next 100 years, but the current church building was dedicated in 1971. An addition was completed in 1998, and the building looked much as it stands today. Whereas Manassas Hill Baptist Church has grown and flourished for 150 years by developing and implementing programs dedicated to glorifying the Lord Almighty while servicing and strengthening the community at large. The church has soldiered on through tough times and has served as a beacon and refuge for many of our neediest citizens. It has provided hope, guidance, and help to those through times of war, drought, famine, family stress and strife, personal uncertainty, and civil unrest. Manassas Hill Baptist Church has provided all of this and more through its rock-solid foundation based on the Word of God and the love of Jesus Christ. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Amelia County Board of Supervisors that Manassas Hill Baptist Church and its leadership, from its founding in 1869 until this present day, have been stalwarts in the lives of Amelia County citizens and are to be commended for all of the many positive achievements and influences that they have caused. The county congratulates Manassas Hill Baptist Church and wishes for it many more years of godly and righteous leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Hogg.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move for the adoption of this resolution.
All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
And Mr. Chairman, if everybody would sign the blank copy that we have here, we'll be able to get it around and get it to Mr. Royal, I guess, before
You have it
the
now?
weekend. We do, before everybody leaves.
Okay. We're doing something a little different with this than we do with the other resolutions. We're asking that all five of us sign this, and I think it's just commendable that they've done what they've done.
That's great.
All right. Next, we have a water tower cleaning project. Mr. Scott has asked for this. We have Mr. Randy Jones, PE engineer from B&B. He is our water consultant and our water engineer. And we'll turn it over to you, sir. Questions, gentlemen?
I don't have any questions of Randy. I just have something I want to say.
What do you want to say?
Do you want to call me out of order before I start, or?
I might if you get out of order.
I'm just joking.
I'm not.
I was going to wait until January when we have a new board before bringing this up, but I don't think I want to waste 3 more months, so I decided to do it tonight. It's a fact our water tower needs to be drained and cleaned and repainted on the inside. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. It's also a fact that with time, the sediment in the tank has only gotten deeper and the corrosion that's there has only grown. That's just you can't dispute that. Once corrosion starts, it doesn't stop. The tower is 20 years old and should have been cleaned 4 times and repainted once by now, all of which we've already paid for. If we don't do something, we will one day have tank-induced water quality problems and possibly tank failure if the corrosion continues. I've never said, nor have I implied, that this cleaning and painting has to be done for water quality issues. It's been misstated in the paper and stuff, but I have never said that. It doesn't yet. The cleaning and painting are for water tank health and condition reasons. An analogy is when I bought my pickup truck, I knew I was going to have it for a really long time. So when I did that, I bought a service plan, lifetime oil changes, stickers, inspections, the fluids, the whole 9 yards. That's pretty much what we've done with the tower. We've been paying $10,000 a year for 20 years for our service plan, but we've never used any service. So using my truck analogy, it's as if instead of getting my oil changed every 5,000 miles, I'm getting it changed every 25,000 miles, and I'm never opening the hood to see what's going on. Something's going to go wrong eventually. The difference is I've gotten my money's worth on my service plan on my truck, but the county has not. Any water quality issues we do have are related to the design of the system and the underutilization of the water distribution system. That's another fact. We just don't have enough water being pushed through the system to keep it fresh and keep it flowing. We're needing to flush the system more often than we should, and we're wasting lots of precious water in the process. And of course, the best long-term solution to all of this is to experience the growth that we thought we were going to have when we built the tower in the first place. More businesses and more homes hooked up to the system would reduce the cost per person, and it would keep us from having to subsidize the system by over $250,000 a year out of the general fund. If we had the growth and the development, I would be the first one to lead the charge for a new water tower, a second water tower. But at the current rate of development, it's not going to happen even in the rosiest of scenarios. Our maximum water usage in our system is 100,000 gallons per day. That has not changed for years and years. Our tank is 500,000 gallons. Our system was built anticipating a lot of growth that just never happened, and it's not coming anytime soon. So there's a variety of methods that can be employed to provide water as backup to the tank when it's taken offline to do the cleaning and painting. We chose one last year that turned out to be too expensive. It wasn't planned well. Cost ballooned. It ended up costing more than twice what we thought it would to begin with. We only asked for quotes on one solution. And I think we need to evaluate and find the best solution by talking to lots of providers and comparing methods, and only then going out to bid for the best one. So I would like to propose in the form of a motion that the Board of Supervisors order a formation of a committee that's charged with the sole mission of determining the most cost-effective way to get this project accomplished. And I think the committee should be made up of people who truly want to get it done, not those whose agenda it is to build a second water tower. And as the only board member with a technical background, I would like to be the one to chair this committee. And I would hope my fellow board members would see the value in that. I would also like to recommend that Mr. Bennett, who complained about his water quality last month at this meeting, be on the committee. He's an electrical engineer, and he's got decades of experience with procurement or managing procurement organizations. And of course, Darrell Goff and our engineer, Randy, would also be on the committee, and maybe some other people. We can get this done, and we can get it done at an affordable cost if we, and in a reasonable time frame, if we choose to be creative.
That it?
Yes,
What are your qualifications?
I'm a mechanical engineer
You graduated from where?
at Lowell Tech in Massachusetts,
All right.
Lowell University.
Would you care to expound on this?
Well, I agree that, the tank is due to come out of operation for service. And I guess my understanding at the last board member meeting we had, that this was not being canceled, but delayed to rebid the first of the year. And after we got everything kind of organized and revised the budget and try to prepare for additional costs. The biggest problem you have with the options, there are lots of options to do. Mm-hmm. Some are very reasonable, some are not. The biggest thing that the county have, which I stand behind and think you should, is that the fire protection is the major thing. And that's what the cost is in this buck storage tank. And if it wasn't for the buck storage tank, you could probably do it a lot cheaper. But you got to account for the fire protection. And the only other means that you could probably, for like the factory, to help handle their fire protection is to provide non-potable water for them. That's an alternative option, but I don't think it's going to be accepted by the manufacturer who has these sprinkler systems, because non-potable water can have, sediment in it that could get into the sprinkler system and cause clogging and not function as intended. Then we have a lawsuit on your hand. So I think, I understand the issue about the cost, and we try to look for the best reasonable option for you. And to meet the fire flow and your domestic demand, you're looking at a 300,000 gallon temporary buck storage tank that needs to go in. Granted, that's a high cost, and of course, our PR initially was recommending to do the second tank, and maybe when you put the second tank in, don't fill both of them up to the maximum capacity. Run them at, say, 210,000 gallons in each tank, which will still be slightly more than what you're currently doing, you're filling right now. But it will, at that volume, you still have sufficient pressure throughout your system, even during a fire flow. Of course, that came with a 1.6 million price tag on it. But to me, why we were pushing that was you got some benefits from it, is that even though you don't have demand need, if something should happen, you have something to cause that tank to get damaged, or terrible tornado or whatever went through and somehow something went and took that tank down, you're in trouble. You have no water. Also, you got one tank, which means you got one main line coming from that tank. If that should rupture, which, it could, it's nothing to say it can't, because you have, I know you'll admit that you have pipe break all the time, particularly in the winter. If that breaks on you, again, you're out of water supply. So having a second tank is a benefit to give you security. So if you lost one supply, you had another means to provide water to the tank. Obviously, that's a lot of price compared to a temporary system, which we were saying about 380,000 for a budget. But that's a lot cheaper. You can get that done, get the tank ready to serve, and get it fixed. But then you spent that money for a temporary fix, and you don't have the money to show for it after 60 days when everything is packed up and moved. So I agree, something needs to be done. We're ready to advertise whenever y'all decide you want to undergo the work. If you want to do the portable system, if somehow you change inside, you want to do the elevated tank, we can get those documents ready and get that out for bid.
My question is this: do you think that we need another water tower? Is that not our best option to take?
It was our recommendation. If you go back at the PR, it was our recommendation that you put a second one up for reliability in your system. Granted, you don't have the demand. The demand hasn't grown as fast as it was projected in earlier PR, but we can accommodate that with reducing the amount of volume you put into the tanks. But that would certainly be a reliability and security for the county should something happen to the other tank. But one way or the other, you do need to act on getting this other tank out of service. I agree with that. So I wouldn't say if you agree to put a second tank in, we wait on. I think you need to, one of the two options you need to move on. You need to move on putting a new elevated tank in, or spend less money and go ahead and put a temporary system in to act as your system while that other tank is taken out of service for cleaning.
All right. Any questions, John, or comments?
As I see it, what harm is that, and it might be an advantage to put together a committee, for example, to work along with you so that you have other eyes looking at it and working with you. And I think that the more folk that you have involved, especially those people who are users of the service, for example, and those of us who might be neophytes when it comes to that kind of technology. But fact is that just having a committee to I think the motion is that some planning to know that something is being done in order to as it relates to getting this activity done, taken care of. And a committee couldn't hurt. Might not be a bad idea.
That's up to the Board of Supervisors, where y'all have a committee to research. Only thing I can say is that, again, as I was pointing out, is the storage.
Right. And
storage is a problem. And either way you go, I don't know that you'll come up with another alternative that'll be even
that might be true, but at the same time, what you're doing, you're killing two birds with one stone. You're getting the plan taken care of, but you're also answering some of the questions that maybe are right there. We just don't know, but you would be working along with them, and therefore it would erase any of the misinformation, the whole ball of eggs.
Well, I was kind of hoping that when we did the PR, when we gave you 5, 6 options, that's what we did. What we did, we gave you we researched and gave you the options of what was available to you. And again, all of them come with a different price tag, some very low, which doesn't consider having to worry about the storage. And then the highest one for the option with temporary uses is that bulk storage tank with the duplex pumps.
Yeah.
And I think that is the option you should go with. If you're saying 1.6 million is too much to invest right now, then that's the option I think you should go with. If you choose that you want to spend more time researching, then I think you actually doing the exact opposite of what you want to do. You want to move ahead, but now you're telling me you want to spend more time trying to see if there's anything else out there. And not say there wouldn't be, but I don't think it's going to be much savings if it is another way.
Not saying delay, it's just working along with. So it's not delaying.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
A few things. First of all, the cost is not 1.6 million. It's the cost is 1.6 million to build it, but we have to finance it, so it's going to end up costing more than $2 million. Secondly, I totally agree with Randy that the best solution would be a second water tank for reliability reasons, redundancy, and the ability to take one tank off and put the other one on. But I simply don't think we can afford it, and it's not a good investment unless we have major development on the drawing boards, is just my opinion. And thirdly, I like to remind everybody that we didn't put any money in the budget for it this year, even though we said earlier that we would do it this year. So also Randy's statements about we need this tank, we need to use potable water, all of those statements that he made just further justify the fact that I think we need more than just one engineer looking at it. I've been on so many engineering projects with design teams where you think you have the right answer and another engineer says, well, what about this? And everybody says, yeah, that makes sense. It just pays to have more people look at it. It's not going to cost us anything. It's just a small amount of time that we'll get together with no pressure, no deadline, so that we can put our heads together and try to come up with something creative. If it turns out that it's not possible at a much lower cost, I'll be the first one to say I was wrong.
Any other questions, John?
Mr. Chairman, I ask Mr. Harvey a question. Mr. Harvey, the price of this water tank seems to float back and forth, several $100,000. What, didn't this tank get itself down to 1.2 or 1.3 million somewhere along the way?
I would defer to Mr. Jones on anything related to that water tank.
I've heard 1.6, 1.2.
It was
about a
Mr.
grant that we
Mr.
didn't
Barnard,
get that was going to be 900,000.
it was 1.6, but there was a $300,000 something from the I forget the name.
Well, that CRC grant,
Yeah.
we basically turned, that grant was turned down, right? Because they had too many attachments?
Yeah, but that's what brought it down to the number you're thinking about.
That's right.
Well,
But either way, we have to finance it.
well, I thought you were still, I thought BB&T was still in charge of, getting this thing ready for next year, like January, for example. I didn't know the ever was, because you didn't get it done we didn't get it done last summer or this past summer. I didn't know that y'all had quit. You haven't quit. Are they still employed?
I think the message the staff got was that we didn't have time and things didn't come together to do it during the summertime, so we would start it up again next year with plenty of time to get it all done. That's where we were.
So it's going
with
to start
that.
up in January. So what Mr. Scott, you're trying to do is get it started a little bit early.
Exactly.
Well, why don't we take that early time and maybe we need to spend 30, this is my suggestion, maybe we need to spend 30 days on what is the real price of a water tank. See, if it costs you $380,000, I see you're sort of shaky there. I got a feeling that's going to be $400,000. You clean the tank 3 times, 3 down 4 is 1.2 million. I mean, I guess face it, if you can clean the tank as often as what it seems to be supposed to have been done, it don't take you long. 10 years is not very long in this life. So all of a sudden you spend 1.2 million, still got one tank. I think down the road, because we're going to be here forever, what we're here for is to set up for the next generation. So it appears to me like we should look in for the big haul and see what another tank is going to cost. Let's get some absolute figures and see where we're at before we start spending $380,000 to clean a tank 4 times, and we spent the price of a new tank. Somewhere down the road, we're going to need another tank because the recession slowed us down. Let's stop and think that 2006, 2007, right. The recession slowed us down. We was on a road with subdivisions and building and so forth, and all of a sudden it went. Everybody knows what happened. And the building's going to come back one of these days.
If a committee is supposed to evaluate everything that could be out there, they would be talking about exactly what Mr. Barnard is talking about, as to whether it's better to spend $400,000 to clean it and then have to start over 5 years or 10 years with none of the assets, wouldn't that committee be looking at the whole thing?
Yes, but the math is wrong. It's not 400,000 every 5 years. Every 5 years, we have to clean it. Cleaning can be done with divers. Every 15 years, we have to paint the inside. That needs to be, have the tank drained. So we don't have to spend that much money every 5 years. It's every 15 years.
Mr. Jones, what's the feasibility of cleaning the tank with the divers? Did we not write that down?
The divers, that wasn't a lot of cost. Only reason I was proposing against that is, one, you already have a contract with people to clean your tank. Of course, they were cleaning when it's empty, but you have a lot of guidelines you'll have to go through when a diver enters your tank, and you're talking about leaving that tank online. You got a lot of guidelines you got to go by the water health department, and it's that can be getting a tricky situation, because if you get any turbidity recorded coming out of that tank, then you have to issue a boil water notice. And
I've done a lot of diving in my day. I did a lot for the U.S. Air Force. And when you touch that silt, it's over with.
yes, sir.
It is going to go through that system like Grant took Richmond. And it's just not going to work very well.
Usually tanks are rehab. You're taking out of service every 8 to 10 years to be painted inside is a normal standard. I wouldn't say that anybody actually goes in and say, well, we'll leave it in operation and remove the silt. Silt sells to the tank, bottom tank. It's going to, soon you put the new tank and put the tank back online and turn the water on, you're going to get sediment start occurring anyway. And I don't think, any issue you think you're having coloration in the system is actually coming from that silt out of the tank. It's more probably your iron manganese that you have in your drinking water that oxidize every now and then between the flushing. So I would just say you would look at every 8 years to 10 years that you would be spent, if you didn't put another tank in, you would be putting up a temporary facility, pumping facility to allow you to take the tank out of service to go in, check the coatings out and repair the interior coating that's needed.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jones, something you just said just now was that the silt was not the discoloration in the water that folks are experiencing.
Yeah, I know y'all have had
That's right.
some people who said sometimes that they see some coloration. And that's, the area that has some issue with coloration is actually the farthest point from the tank.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to make you aware that the silt that accumulates in the tank is not creating any issues for the potable, for the drinking water.
That silt is not coming out of the tank. It's just sitting at the bottom,
Yes, sir.
8 feet of it.
Mr. Harvey, given the charge that was given that we talked about in the last meeting, when we had this issue to come up, and the committee, the staff was given some charge with some responsibility to put something, to do some follow-up things. What would be the harm of having, just throw this out for discussion? What would be the harm of having a group of folks, several people to work along with the staff and
Would that not be redundant?
I'm saying working with, I'm saying being a part of that process.
That could certainly be done.
Let me interject this. B&B gave us 5 alternatives. And it cost us to get that. We're just throwing that out the window. Sometime we should stop and smell the roses and see what they're telling us and then go from there, it looks to me.
I don't think any of the other 5 make sense.
Did what?
I don't think any of the other 5 make sense.
Meaning, I'm not sure I
Like
understand.
elevating the GBC tank. That
Right, well.
It doesn't solve the problem.
You want to look at all alternatives. We looked at everything.
I know. And we
choice
picked the best
I'm not
one.
saying that they're
Let
the
him
right
talk.
ones. That's
Let
why
him
you
talk.
looked at them. But you looked at as many possibilities you could to see if you come up with the one that best fit the situation. If that tank had been had a lot more than 100,000 gallon tank, then that would have probably been a good option. But the volume itself is the drawback, and that's what I'm saying here. That the whole big thing is the volume. If it wasn't for the volume, you could find a cheaper alternative.
Yeah, and it's my contention that we can separate the fire suppression needs from the potable water needs.
Well,
And I think we need
You'll
to.
have to get the manufacturer and everybody to
Yes,
agree.
and that should be part of this committee's job, is to go find out whether or not that's possible. If we could separate the two, then our 5 wells would keep up with our water supply perfectly fine, no matter what.
That is correct.
And the tank would not affect that. And if we could provide fire suppression water to the people who have sprinkler systems in a different way, and I'm not saying I know what that way is yet, but I want to find out, then the problem's solved and it won't be expensive. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes you can use that at your manufacturer. I think there's a pond nearby, well, not nearby, but close enough that could possibly serve as non-potable water. But you'll have to get everybody to agree that you're pumping non-potable water, which is not what they initially designed a sprinkler system for. And so I don't know if the insurance will agree to do that. And I'm not saying it will or wouldn't. I just said, as we said at the last meeting, that would be an option that y'all could approach and see. And I think some communication has been done on that. I was not part of it, though.
But you're assuming that we use non-potable water. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we separate the two. We could use potable water in tanks to provide fire suppression. The potable water may never get used, and it could be recycled for something else. It would only get used if there was a fire.
Well, you would get that potable water from
the tank.
You telling me still putting the tank out there, though?
No, we could pump it out of the tank over time and put it into other tanks, and then locate those tanks wherever the fire suppression is needed. I've looked into it a little.
You'll need 200,000 gallons for fire protection for that, what you'll need.
Yeah, I know.
You'll need a tank that you can put 200,000 gallons in with fire pump.
Or several small tanks.
So you're doing the same thing.
Several
we're
small
already
tanks
saying.
in parallel.
So you're actually putting together the same thing we're saying. You just separate and say it's just fire, not domestic.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is my point. If we get a room full of people who understand this stuff and beat it out, we're going to come up with a better solution. Do you agree with that? Isn't it your experience when you get several engineering minds together, you get a better answer?
This man has got the qualifications to build it himself.
Yeah, I know.
And you're belittling this conversation.
I'm not belittling anything.
Oh, yes, you are.
No, I'm
Mr.
not.
Chairman,
Yes.
let me, if-
I'm agreeing with most of what he's saying.
Go ahead.
it seems like we have an engineered group here already. We're making a motion. It appears to me like, Mr. Scott, you're making a motion to check behind the engineering group we already have. So
No.
if we want to move forward, starting now rather than January, it suits me. Anything to get the thing done if that's what we choose to do. And we haven't said we weren't going to clean the tank yet, okay? That's still online as of this past summer. So all we got to do is tell our engineering firm here at B&B to go ahead and start the process of getting ready to move forward with the system we got. You got to have potable water, and you got to have fire suppression. You can't cut any corners. Right, Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
And so we're going to stay in compliance with the health department and so forth. We got to have potable water and fire suppression. We can't cut any corners. And I'm not going to say it anymore. So with that said, we have a firm in place. All we got to do is just activate them. Am I clear?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so
We don't need
I'll be clear too, okay?
We don't need a motion to form a committee to check behind B&B engineering firm.
Nobody's talking about checking behind. We're talking about working
That's what it
together,
looks like.
collaborating. And my problem with going back to the way we did it before is the person managing the engineering firm wants a new tower. His agenda is to get a new tower.
Who's that?
Mr. Harvey.
I can
so
say
do
that I have no pressure put on me on how I wrote that PR. We gave our recommendation based on what we thought not what was our client pushed or not pushed.
And Mr. Chairman, we voted to use that, the system that we come up with back, what, last February or March? We made a motion that night, right?
Yes,
It hasn't been rescinded, so it's still in place, right, Ms. Harvey?
What was that?
We have a motion still in place with B and B to clean the tank. We picked the system we wanted last March, right?
Correct.
We
Yes, sir. Okay.
ran out of time.
So
and
that
the instructions
motion
were-
is still in place.
The instructions were to start back up the following year.
That's right.
With enough time to get it done.
So all right, so the last question I have, Mr. Jones, if you start back up in January 1st, will you be ready to go on May 20th?
All I do is change the date. If you stay with doing a temporary pumping system, all I do is put in what day we want that receive bids. We're good to go.
But if you start back up January 1st, can you be ready to go May 20th?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yes, sir, that's what I need.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, there's a motion on the floor. I call for question.
Just a minute. If you go back and if you go back on the old motion, and in doing that, are you going to look at the water tanks as well as the pumping system and the cost ratio between the two and the cost ratio between a single pedestal tank and a 4 or 5 leg tank?
We can look at any alternative for us, new tanks and budget. Multi-legs normally is the ones that prove to be the most economic, and when we put them out for bid, but I can easily write it. If you decide you want to go back to doing the elevated tank, I can certainly put together a bid document that allow the bidder to bid any type of tank, and you take the most cost-effective tank design that they submitted. So you can bid on multi-leg spiral tank, composite tank, and take the lowest bid of whichever one comes in.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I can't remember how far back this goes, but my recollection is that it was going to take, and this is back numerous years, that it was going to take $100,000 to clean the tank. That was the reason that we had interest in the tank remaining up at the GBC building. And, I think you were one that gave the report about how it could be redone at a cost that seemed that we were going to get done for less than $100,000. But then we find out, or at least I find out, maybe I was just not prepared for it, that our quantities just weren't sufficient by using that tank.
That's correct.
And
When you
so-
put the fire protection in.
Right.
You're
But
short.
anyway, I'm still hung up on the $100,000. That's still, my challenge is going much beyond that in what we do. And so, if there's opportunity to investigate using that tank, using something there, using some other type of deal, because I believe that there's alternative as well. Of course, you're going to have to get the people on board at the dress factory to make it work. But I'm still hung up on the $100,000, because if we're going to spend a third of what a new tank is going to be, it's silly not to go ahead and build another tank. So the $100,000 part, something in that neighborhood, is still what I think we have to. Of course, maybe it won't be my decision, any part of that, but then that's where I really want to be, because that's what I think the information was that was given to us, and I'm still hung up on it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Whitaker, if there was another alternative out there that was $100,000 or less, would you want to know about it? If it was not one of the 5 that they recommended, then there was yet another alternative. Wouldn't you want to know about it?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
What I had hoped was that, and of course, maybe it needs to be done differently, but anyway, what I'd hoped is that, that having that information to our engineers would be helpful. But I don't know, I don't know what's the best way. I mean, I can't recommend.
I don't either.
The best way, if you let country boys do it, we could get it fixed. But when you start getting government regulations involved, you start having some challenges. And that's where I think we have been at this point, is with the challenges that the engineering firm is going to have to go through.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think the challenge is at this point. But if we had to figure it out, some country boys could get together and get it figured out. But unfortunately, that's not necessarily the way it's going to work.
Mr. Chairman, I am not in any way suggesting we go cut corners or that we don't meet all the requirements of all the American Water Works Association and all that. I'm not proposing that. I just believe there are other ways that we can do this than the 5 that were in the original plan that was done a couple of years ago.
Let me ask you this, why didn't you bring all this up originally?
Today?
Why did you all of a sudden change your mind now that nothing that this engineering firm done is good enough for you?
I haven't changed my mind. I'm suggesting we start earlier and get some more people in the room rather than wait till January, and then next year we won't have it done in time for the schools being closed either.
Money, every time you change course, it costs money.
We're not on a course,
Mr. Chairman, I call for the question a second time. Let's get that motion out of the way if we can.
Restate the motion.
The motion was that we form a committee, and I would like to chair the committee, and I would like Mr. Bennett, Randy, and Darrell to be on the committee as well, to go off and investigate alternative methods for providing separate water, fire suppression and potable water for our system so we can take the tank offline.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
And so this committee that you're proposing would give a report then to this body
Yes, sir.
and move forward from there. All right.
Yeah, not make any commitments, just investigate, gather information, and then come back with a plan.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
and this would be done in conjunction with, and I think it would be better coordinated through the county administrator's office. You're going to have to be doing some things anyway. Your folk are going to be, based on the charge that was given, this would in no way interfere with. In fact, I think that it would be good to do both of those things in coordination with the charge that you all were given.
Add something.
So the two can work hand in hand, basically.
But, Mr. Chairman, I'm not proposing what Mr. Harris just said.
I hear what you're saying.
What I want is for this committee to be managed by me, and Darrell will be on it, but Taylor will have nothing to do with it.
Okay.
I think if we have an engineering firm, they need to manage the entire situation.
They're
You're
just part of the committee.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Have you got his credentials?
We're both engineers.
Have you got his credentials?
No, he's a professional engineer, a PE. I'm not a PE. I'm a mechanical engineer.
I understand that, which knocks you out of the loop.
You what?
It knocks you out of the loop.
Mr.
no, it
Chairman,
doesn't.
I hate to keep butting in here, but we got a question. The question been called twice, and to be quite honest with you, I'd like to vote this motion down, then we'll make another motion and change him just a little bit. We ought to have a team in place, so.
Call for the question, let's have it. All in favor?
No.
No. All opposed?
No.
No.
Mr. Harris, did you vote?
I voted aye.
Okay. Thank you.
All right,
So how'd the vote turn out?
3-2 against.
it's 3 against.
3-2.
I can't hear. what
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, 3-2.
2 to 3. The motion failed.
Yeah.
Motion does
Okay.
fail.
Now, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that, and it may not even need a motion, but maybe Mr. Gore can help me a little bit here, but we have an engineering firm in place, and they had instructions on what to do. Now, if we want them to activate them and let them start early, and maybe look for a little something more cost productive, then I would make a motion that just for them to do just that, and come back next month with dress up the system you already had in place, and see if you can find a little bit more cost effective. If not, then we got to go with what we got.
Understand?
Okay? Now, you want that in a formal motion? Does that need to be, Mr. Gore?
I need to understand it.
Well, we got an engineering firm. They already know what to do according to what we decided on back in the first part of the year. If we're not going to change that, then everything's in place. If we want them to look for a more cost-effective system, and I think Mr. Jones said that's probably not going to happen. He's already gone through all of that. So
Yeah, unless somehow you can find a manufacturer agree to non-potable water for the sprinklers.
Well, you got to have potable water and fire suppression with no corners cut. And I'm satisfied with what you had, but if you can find something more cost productive, I'd be a fool not to accept it.
Oh, it's the way are you?
And then if you come back in here and it's too expensive, maybe we need to go with a water tank, another water tank. But I think everybody wants the tank clean, so maybe we need to bite the bullet the first time, clean the tank, and then see what progress the county makes. If population grows, then the need of a tank pops up. But I think the tank probably needs to be cleaned personally. It's been out there long enough. It's like an old car. You got to do something with it later on, sooner or later. And I think this tank has probably reached somewhere in that general area, sooner or later. It needs to be cleaned. And so we may have to bite the bullet on this first deal. But if you go back and look at the many years we didn't clean it, and multiply that into the cost of doing it one time, it's probably pretty cheap. Sounds like we should have cleaned it about 2 times that we have not. So if you start to look at it on that basis, it's pretty cheap. Divide 3 into 400,000, for example, or 2 into 400,000, okay? So if you're going to have it for 18 or 19 years, clean it one time, that's pretty cheap, I think. And that gives us 10 years. 10 years of growth or no growth. 10 years of having to have a second tank or not having to have a second tank. Think about it on that basis. Okay?
Mr. Harden.
I withdraw the motion. I don't think we need a motion. And I say, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to give
need
B
anything
a
else?
chance to go back and recoup some information for us for the towers. And if you would work with him to get that done, and if you see the need to get other people involved in it, we'd gladly do it. But we already have, he's been in motion, he's compiled evidence, and we need to know that plus whatever else you can find. And we'd like to find the cost of the towers if that exists. And the two of you work that out, and if you need anybody else, we'll get Darryl, we'll get this gentleman, and we'll do what we do.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think 30 days is enough time to do this properly.
Well, let's give them a chance to see what they say, and we can add another 32 if we have to.
And can we be clear that are other alternatives going to be investigated, or are we just asking him to go recalculate what it costs?
He has 5 things that he's already investigated.
I know, I'm talking about
He's going to
other things.
investigate those, plus the cost of the tanks. Single, 4, 5 legs, whatever it is, all of them are different prices. And the capacities of them are important to us also.
So
We need something that will allow us to clean this tank anytime we want to, or if a catastrophic event happens and
I
it's
understand.
downed or torn up or whatever, you have an alternative source. With a water bag, you don't have anything. It's like renting a house. You can rent it for 20 years. At the end of the 20 years, you're still trying to figure out what to do with it. You've
So,
already spent your
okay,
money, you
I-
have nothing.
I'd just like to be clear, this board is not interested in trying to find lower cost alternatives than the 5 that have been.
You're not being very clear because that's not what we've said.
That's what I'm hearing. There are other ways to do it.
That's not what we're hearing.
Okay.
This is a professional here. You're not.
All right, all right.
And we will give him the opportunity.
Let's move on, Mr. Chairman.
Randy, Mr. Chairman, can you explain the difference between a degreed engineer and a professional engineer?
It's getting kind of petty.
Yeah.
No,
I'm
the
not
the
here
chairman's
to
trying to
start
belittle
saying.
my background and my
It's
credentials.
kind of being kind
I
of
am
petty.
more than capable of understanding this system.
All right. Any other comments?
No, I'm happy.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Next is the county drought declaration.
All right, Mr. Chairman, this item number 8 is resolution. And the backup information for a drought declaration. I've gotten this information from Laura Siegel, the county extension office. We're asking for this resolution to be passed and sent to Governor Northern. This is the first step in designating an Amelia County a disaster area, which will provide access to the farmers to different federal programs mostly that will help them recover some of their losses and cope with the dry weather while it's still here. So the resolution is clear enough. I guess it's the 3rd page in the handout. And we're asking, we can answer any questions anybody might have, but we're asking for this to be approved.
All right, gentlemen, it's your pleasure.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Before we get started. Mr. Harvey, you had some other pieces, but they're
That's-
not as directly
Not-
associated.
Not related to this. Same, it's because of the dry weather, obviously, but it doesn't have anything to do with the drought
So
designation.
we can dispense with this
That's
first?
correct.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'll move for the approval.
All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
All right, the second complimentary issue is we've got a press release from DEQ. They have issued a drought watch for the Appomattox River Basin. And this is important because it affects our water system. This is putting everybody on notice that we are at the beginning of drought conditions. And if this watch turns into a warning, there will be measures that we will have to take to preserve water. If that warning turns into an emergency, there will be severe things that we're going to have to put in place to manage our water system. So this information is out public now. It's on the website. Anybody's got any questions about what we might be doing should this thing turn into a warning, we'd be glad to answer it. Most of this funneled through the Public Works Department. But this is a DEQ drought watch. And then I also wanted to call your attention to the possibility of enacting a local emergency and burn ban. That's something that our emergency manager will do. He's got the authority to do it. We were very close to doing it at the end of last week. We're looking at the weather and hoping that we might get a little bit of relief. Had 3/10 of rain on Sunday, had just a fuzz over an inch today. So we pulled back from putting this on, but we've got the paperwork and everything here. If we have to do it, Kent will issue the order. It will be immediate. The Board of Supervisors will have to ratify it at the next meeting to make it official. And instead of putting it in place right Monday when we thought we might be seeing some rain, we thought if some was coming that we didn't want to shut down the different projects that are going on. We're burning over at Green Rock today. they wouldn't have been able to do that if we put the ban in place. So it wasn't that we were being callous or being reckless. We just didn't want to shut people down. They weren't able to burn until we got the rain. We didn't have the ban in place. We got a little bit of rain, so folks were able to move forward. So those are the three things. The drought, the resolution that you just passed, going to the governor to help the farmers out. DEQ has put the notice in place for the Appomattox River Basin for a drought watch. And then we've got this burn ban that's ready to go with a moment's notice should this thing not break. So those are the three things that I wanted to bring to you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey, could you define what the burn ban means? A little bit more, what kind of definitions go with that?
Just outside fires.
Outside fire.
Any outside fires?
Going to stop outside fires, whether it's a trash barrel or whether it's a brush pile or whether it's any type of a control burn. There'll be a ban, which means none.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, so are we the only county that has not yet declared a burn ban in this area?
Cumberland had,
Powhatan did last week.
yeah, there are more that have done it than have not. I've got today, thought I brought some maps with me, but I don't see them. There's a little band up through the Piedmont that did.
Piedmont, yeah.
Buckingham must have just yesterday. They were on the Department of Forestry's ban list, but they were not on the one that Ken had gotten from some Emergency Managers Association. So it's more of them that have done it than not.
And another question, are our water levels in our wells still holding steady, or are they?
I guess Mr. Goff is still here, and he can tell you specifically. I think we're down about a foot, which is not nearly as much as we were the last time we had a drought, where he's watching them and reports in every day. So, and Mr. Goff, if you've got anything to add.
We're down about a foot over last month, but we're down about 2.5 to 3 feet over this time last year.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, last year was a wet year.
Wet year, yeah.
Past year, so.
Thank you.
We monitor it every day.
All right. Any further questions or comments? County Administrator's Report, Waste Management.
Waste management. For September, the host fee, $235,439.79. Looks like that's, I guess, pretty well stabilized with the new contracts they've had. Pretty much in that same ballpark. DMV Select, item number 9. The payment, gross collections were $170,000 last month, $70,693 to the county. Those reports are in your book, or those two sheets are in your book. The CRC, they've submitted their items of interest under tag number 10. We just had a meeting up there today. If anybody would like to discuss any of those that are on there, I think either Mr. Gleason or I should be able to address it.
Mr. Chairman, on the CRC updates,
You what?
on the CRC updates, Mr. Evan Feynman, the Chief Broadband Advisor, was there. Did he have anything to say of significance?
Same thing we've been hearing from him for the last 6 months, that he is the executive director of the Tobacco Commission, but he's also got some title from the governor, his broadband man. And he's just pushing that, saying, collaborate with your adjoining localities. Bulk is great. There's great value in quantity. And they're out here to help us any way that they can.
I'd just like to point out today, I was at a Go Virginia meeting today, and Go Virginia has allocated some funds for broadband middle mile, and that if Amelia is interested, we should approach them and fill out a grant form.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was at the commission meeting, and they're still behind this project, this broadband project. And they mentioned there's other funding that might be available also, and looking at other resources to augment with those funds that are
Yeah,
made
and
available.
seeing as though it's two different Go Virginia regions, if you have an inter-region
Right.
cooperation, you can possibly get no match.
No match, that's correct. So
What's middle mile? I know it,
Not the final mile, it's fiber, basically.
Yeah.
More fiber
more fiber.
to get
More fiber.
closer to each home.
What's the difference in that and last mile?
Last mile's going to the, actually, to the house.
Going down the driveway?
that's going,
Okay.
that's right.
All right. So that's the CRC report, the Piedmont Regional Jail Authority, tag number 11. This is the board packet from the month before. We also had that meeting today. I guess the big news there is we came up with our quarterly allocation. This is the first one we've done without Vivian Giles, who was both an attorney and an accountant. And it's going to be right at $80,000 for the quarter, $320 annualized. It's right in line with what we had budgeted. The Commonwealth Transportation Board meetings, Melody Foster attended that for us last night or yesterday afternoon. He was in Glen Allen. She had a conversation with the Secretary of Transportation, Shannon Valentine, about the project that we have applied for up at the schools. She also talked with our member from the Commonwealth Transportation Board. And he was one actually who pushed that project several years ago when it was unsuccessful. So we hope they'll view it through a more favorable set of lenses this time. At that same time, Mr. Gleason and I were at a VDOT meeting in public hearing in Cumberland that the Lynchburg region was putting on to discuss the bridge at Folks Bridge. You know, Amelia replaced the one down there at Stony Point, and the one 3 miles downstream at Folks Bridge, that's under consideration for being replaced. And it was a very little turnout, but it was all positive, I think, towards the replacement. The item number 13 is the Virginia War Memorial. You've got a thank you note from the foundation for the contribution that the Board of Supervisors made to them. They're also putting a pitch for their golf tournament where they go to, obviously, to raise money. If there are any golfers that hear this, or if you have any golfers in your sphere of influence, I'm sure they would appreciate new foursomes coming in. The Amelia County population profile, we added that. I thought it was be interesting for folks to look at. It actually came from John Tyler and talks about our student mix and programs. Any questions anybody might have about any of that, we'd certainly be glad to try to answer. And then we've got quarterly reports. Quarterly reports from the county agencies are in the book, and we've got another one, I think it's been emailed to everybody, that is here as well. So that is the end of the county administrator's report.
You have that FEMA letter they were given.
I do have a FEMA letter. Did you give them a copy of that?
Yeah.
And this is to come to you. It just came in today. This is to come to you through the administrator's report. There's going to be a community coordination and outreach meeting on election day from 2 until 4 p.m. at the Amelia County Administrative Offices. FEMA is bringing a team out to talk to local staff, officials, to talk about their new floodplain maps. So it's not a mandatory requirement to attend, but it should be some interest, and certainly that would be the place that you would need to go if you had any questions about the new flood maps. But that's election day, and that was not the first date that we offered them to come. In fact, it was not a date that we offered them to come. I'm not sure exactly how they came up with it. But we wanted everybody to get that on the calendar if they were so inclined. And that, Mr. Chairman, is the end of my report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Harvey. Next, we go to board members' comments. District 1, I just reiterate what Mr. Harvey said. We had a meeting with the state and highway department in Cumberland. We have been after Folks Bridge for maybe 3 years, that trying to get some attention to it. We finally did, and this bridge will be approximately 4.6 million. We're not sure exactly what that's going to entail. We looked at the blueprints yesterday, but it should be, they'll go out for bids in July of 20, is it not? And then it should start by July of 21, that next fiscal year. So it looks like we're going to get a bridge. It'll be a steel bridge, and hope everybody's going to be happy, because the commerce will be able to move from Cumberland into Amelia County and vice versa. We'll also be able to get fire trucks across it, rescue, police, anything that would help both neighborhoods, we would have it. District 2, what do you have?
No comments.
3?
Nothing right now, Mr. Chairman.
All right. District 4?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just make just a real short remark here. I really believe this water tank needs to be clean. I don't have anything written down, I'm just looking down. I think it needs to be clean. I think we got ourselves in a bind here. We're waiting too long to clean it the first time, so I think we need to bite the bullet and clean this water tank the first time. There's a lot of things in the future, we're thinking about in the future, but I think they're too inconclusive right now to say it will be done in the next year or 2 years. I don't think the water tank can wait that long. I think the water tank needs its first cleaning. That's my remarks, Mr. Chairman.
District 5?
District 5, Mr. Chairman, I would like to, excuse me, thank Mr. Harvey's office for putting together that, for working with Bonanza Hill. That they made the request, and they knew that it might, they didn't think it would be timely and whether it could be put together, but you got together with some of the folk down there and were able to put it together and to get it to the board in time for us to deal with it. And I appreciate the board. I'm sure they will thank you for having done that. But thanks for taking the lead on that and getting that squared away. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Anyone else? Any other business? All right, see no reason to go into a closed session. All right. All in favor of adjournment?
All right.
Motion? All right.
I'll make a motion.
All right,
Motion
all in
to adjourn,
favor?
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
All right.
Motion we adjourned. Have you got the resolution so we can? Just one of them, bro. Just one. Oh, I didn't see it. I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. Oh, yeah.
I'll send it down the line
Yeah,
because I want my pen back.
I understand. Thank you, sir. ships. Swab in. We have shipwreck or something? Hey, shipwreck?